But why are we doing a podcast? Does the world need another podcast?
Well, maybe the world doesn't. I do, because I'm a huge podcast fan.
Me too. I've also been told my entire life that I have the face for radio and podcasts, so this is a great format for me.
Hi, Jesse. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Let's Make a Scene podcast. So I'm Anick Beaulieu. I am the CEO of C2. We design impactful business gatherings, VIP hosting experiences, and any sort of B2B fabulous stuff. We're also known for C2 Montreal, which is our flagship that we've been producing for over a decade now in the beautiful town of Montreal. So Jesse, hi.
Hi, Anick. That's a great intro, and that's hard to beat. But my name's Jesse Gaynor. I'm the VP of Growth and Partnerships. I've been at C2 for, oh my God, almost 6 years now. I have a background in media and advertising, previously advice. I played in a touring punk rock band for 10 years, so I'm very passionate about very cool experiences. So happy to be here today. Anick, what are we doing here today? What is this podcast about?
Well, I think that we've spent so much time producing great experiences for brands all over the world for our own flagship. And over the last few months and year, we've been looking at what makes those experiences magical. So we've took a bit of a step back, looked at the broader experience economy, and really tried to define what was the magic behind some of the most transformative experiences out there. So we came up with this framework, this white paper that's called Generative Experiences, that really explores the full potential of experiences. So their, societal impact, their economic impact, their personal impact, and we're inclusive folks. We know that if we want to move the needle, we need to bring people on board. And we're just fortunate to be in a position where we meet a lot of very passionate experience makers all the time. And we wanted to open up the conversation and just bring it to light.
We're calling this podcast, Let's Make a Scene, right? And now I love that. It's our rallying cry, right? But do you want to talk a little bit about why, right, we're calling it Let's Make a Scene?
Well, clearly I am not the punk rocker in this conversation. So, but I think I am kind of daring. And so for us, Let's Make a Scene. Well, first of all, we're in Montreal, right? And I don't know if you see in the back, but it's actually the Cirque du Soleil show that's getting set up. And I think for me, it really calls to those roots. This notion of bringing something entertaining. We come from the B2B space, which is, usually synonymous with something a little bit boring. And we've been known to dare. We've been known to shake things up, to break the status quo. And I think that this is such a great rallying cry to convey this message. But, what does it speak to you?
Well, you called it out, right? I mean, I've spent the last, 30 years of my life, subverting expectations and, making people shocked and somewhat scared, I guess. And it's not to mean we're going to do that through events, but I love the idea of creating a space where we can empower people to really push the needle, right? And to really push things forward. And it's our roots, right? I think what I'd love you to talk about is kind of explain where we are right now, because this podcast is based on the history of C2 Montreal, which is this event we're about to deliver.
Yeah, so we are in Montreal and we're producing C2 tomorrow morning, right? So all of these guests coming from all over are going to gather in a couple hours before the curtain opens. And so this is, I think, kind of sentimental in a way, because as we're maturing and kind of, putting that framework around GenXP, we're doing it in our hometown where it all started. So,
well, I get why we're here, but why are we doing a podcast?
And we've talked about this a lot, you and and I think it's a format that allows us to bring a certain level of intimacy to a conversation. It's also something that we can bring with us. I feel that one of the, kind of weirdest thing about the industry is that a lot of conversation around experiences happen in very unexperiential formats. And I just feel like this will allow us to bring the podcast in the environments that are stimulating the conversation. I also think the other question we were trying to answer is why now? And personally, for me, I think that there's very little concrete, mature tools to bring the discipline forward to a level that's actually legitimate in the boardroom. And I know you've been talking to a lot of experience makers that are kind of struggling to bring this conversation around ROI to their decision makers. And so I'm curious to see, from your point of view, who do you want this podcast to be for, and what do you want it to achieve?
That's a great question, because I think at the start we talked about the fact that we want to broaden the conversation around experiences and probably reach like more business leaders from a whole bunch of different sectors. But for me, I'm really excited for my people, for experienced designers to listen to this podcast, because the thing I hear the most from them is the struggle, right? Of course they want to do cool things. They want to be able to push expectations and go beyond boundaries and do things that have never been done before. But then they get in a room with their CFO who goes, cool, you have 30% less money and we need you to sell this many pairs of pants. And they're struggling to figure out how to take what they know in their hearts, which is that great experiences actually do work for business, and have a framework for that. So my hope is that when we have these conversations, what this podcast can do is arm our people to be able to go into those meetings and confidently have a discussion about why great experience design, participatory meeting design, generative experiences can really push the needle for them. How about you?
I love all of what you just said, but I also think that whoever's making business, and I just hope that, maybe once in a while there's, a business executive that's not responsible for necessarily an event portfolio that gets drawn into our conversation and that just kind of gets it and feels more comfortable investing in it.
So we've got a couple of episodes of this podcast coming up. We're really excited.
Stay tuned.
Well, I'm excited to listen to this.
So where can we find it?
Where can we find it? Well, you can find this podcast anywhere fine podcasts are made, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to also follow C2 at C2 Experiences. And you can download the white paper that we've been talking about at GenXP at c2genxp.com.
Yes, that's right.
Amazing. I got the website right. Okay, cool.
All right. Let's make a scene,
Let's make
Jesse.
a scene. Woo.